Hello friends, here we will discuss about the subject cost management and the concepts that it deals. Costing is the technique and process of ascertaining costs whereby cost accounting primarily deals with collection, analysis of relevant cost data for interpretation and presentation of problems of management. A thorough study and analysis is often well noted by the managers. The role of managers in costing has increased the science of management in costing. Let's commit efforts to accustom this newly ventured mode of teaching and learning resources. A very good luck. Module 1, Cost Management. Cost management is the process by which an organization controls and plans the cost of doing business. The purpose of cost management is to ensure adequately supply of funds from the right sources at the right cost and at the right time to meet the funding needs. Being an aid to management, arrangement of cost data is a tool of guidance. Surviving over the surplus cost is often riskier for a heavy growth. As cost management is simply not cost finding, rather it is a device for cost control and cost reduction, high potential can be marked in a diagnosed analysis of the cost structure. Geographical distance is no more a space of design, affecting higher opportunities provided by the global competition. Improved transportation and current or communication in conjunction with high quality technological operations carry higher prices have urged the science of increasing cost management. Strategic cost management is the process of combining the decision-making structure with the cost information in order to reinforce the business strategy as a whole. It measures and manages costs to align the same with the company's business strategy. The various components of strategic cost management are formulating the strategies, communication of the strategies in the entire organization, or giving up a strategical confirmation in the whole of the organization, planning and carrying out tactics to execute those strategies, developing and implementing controls to track the success. The developing and implementing control involves whether there is any deviation when the formulated strategies or whether the formulated strategies are on the right path and to lead the right success. Cost concepts play a wider role in decision making. It is often the management's courtesy on which the decision making and cost concepts are liberally used. These are some of the cost concepts in decision making, that is fixed, variable and mixed costs, byproduct costs, discretionary costs, step costs. These are very few costs that are examples of in the case of cost concepts in decision making. Trends towards increased automation, reduced human labor have replaced direct cost to indirect cost. Activity-based costing is related with improvement in cyclical time and quality. Nowadays, global competition forced manufacturing services and organization to become more flexible, integrated and highly automated in order to increase their productivity at reduced rate. But it is impossible to sustain competition without an accurate cost calculation mechanism. Activity-based costing is an understanding of the costing behavior having a direct connection with the cost and cost drivers. Traditional cost method groups the general expenses, that is overhead cost, in the general cost centers such as those of production administration, disposal, services and research, and then distribute them to the products. Activity-based costing categorizes them to the activities that consume them. It analyzes all the activities, providing information to the administration of those activities that contribute less or cost more than they should, letting the managers abolish some of them. Compared to traditional costing, activity-based costing modules have the advantage that most of them are especially suitable for operations with higher overhead costs, strongly diversified services, and complex service structures. As said, traditional cost accounting was limited in its ability to accurately determine the cost of production and related services. As such, managers made decisions based on inaccurate data. Here comes the importance of activity-based costing. Activity-based costing, by contrast, identifies costs and affects the relationship in order to objectively assign cost. In applying activity-based costing, where costs are associated with the services that the customers demand or the activities that are consumed. A firm incurs a cost when it uses a resources for some purpose. For example, a company produces kitchen appliances, uses certain resources. The cost of materials such as sheet, metal, and bowls for the enclosure, cost of manufacturing, labor, and other costs. Often costs are assigned into meaningful groups called cost pools. Costs can be grouped in many different ways, including the type of cost, that is labor cost in one pool, material cost in another, by source, that is department 1, department 2, or by responsibility, that is manager 1, manager 2. For example, an assembly department or a product engineering department might be treated as a cost pool. So, cost pools are the meaningful groups into which costs are often collected. A cost driver is any factor that has the effect of changing the amount of total cost. For a firm which competes on the basis of cost leadership, management of the key cost drivers is essential. For example, to achieve its low-cost leadership in manufacturing, P&G carefully watches the design and manufacturing factors that drive the cost of its products. It makes design improvements when necessary, and the manufacturing plants are designed and automated for the highest efficiency in using material, labor, and equipment. For firms that are not cost leaders, the management of cost drivers may not be so critical, but attention to the key cost drivers contributes directly to the firm's success. For example, because an important cost driver for retailers is loss and damage to merchandise, most retailers establish careful procedures for handling, displaying, and storing their merchandise. So, a cost driver is any factor that causes a change in the cost of an activity. Activity-based costing or activity-based cost drivers are identified by using activity analysis, a detailed description of the specified activities performed in the firm's operations. The activity analysis includes each step in manufacturing the product or in providing the service. For each activity, a cost driver is determined to explain how the cost incurred for that activity changes. Activity-based costing assigns the overhead cost to products in a logical manner than the traditional approach of simply allocating costs on the basis of machine hours. Activity-based costing first assigns cost to the activities that are real costs of the overhead. It then assigns the cost of those activities only to the products that are actually demanding the activities. Activity-based costing actually analyzes the activities and also helps to improve the operational and management control in the firm, since performance at the detailed level can be monitored and evaluated. For example, identifying which activities are contributing value to the customer and which are not, and focusing on the aspects of the activities that needs more attention and that are mostly different from other expectations. So activity-based costing and activity-based management have a higher portfolio in the levels of cost management. The activity-based costing system provides a better and more logical distribution of overhead, resulting in the accurate costing. Traditional costing or traditional system of charging indirect cost was designed when direct costs were dominant part of processing cost and overhead were insignificant, and thus any distortions in cost due to inappropriate distribution of overhead were not significant. But nowadays, overheads have assumed great importance, and there is a need for a more sophisticated system for accounting of overhead. Traditional costing approach uses broad averages of charging overhead uniformly to products or services, and this is known as cost smoothing or peanut butter costing. Cost smoothing leads to undercosting of certain products and overcosting of other products. When one product is undercosted, it results in other product being overcosted because total amount of overhead remains unchanged. This is known as product cross subsidization or product cost cross subsidization. The need to measure more accurately how different products and services have used the resources has led to the development of a more refined costing system known as activity-based costing. By defining activities and identifying the cost of performing each activity, the activity-based costing becomes more prominent and logical in distribution of overhead. I hope the concept is clear. Thank you. Module 2, Modern Cost Management Concepts. KAIZEN costing. KAIZEN is a Japanese management philosophy. It is a combination of two terms, Kai and Zen. Kai means change, Zen means better. KAIZEN means making changes for better on a continuous basis. It is an approach to continuous improvement involving everyone in the organization. It includes both people and processes to promote quality at all levels in the organization. KAIZEN costing is a technique of costing that focuses on continuous cost reduction during the manufacturing stage. It aims at removing the inefficiencies that can be implemented from production process of KAIZEN. The main focus of Pareto chart is the process and not the product. Chart, check sheet, stratification, cause and effect diagram, etc. And the benefits of KAIZEN includes customer satisfaction, forming better work groups or work teams, and of course continuous improvement in both cost reduction and the performance of the organization, creates better work environment, avoids unnecessary problems, and helps as a problem solver, widely applicable in all aspects. It also reduces wastages. Target costing. It is used to monitor and control the actual cost incurred. Target costing is the process of calculating the estimated cost of a product or service that enables a company to compete in the market in the long run. Target cost is the maximum allowable cost at particular point of time, considering successive stages in a product's life cycle. Target cost is a market-driven standard cost. To calculate target cost, the formula is target cost is equal to target selling price minus desired profit margin. The steps involved in target costing include to conduct a market research so as to identify the product's weakness, strength, and our competitors, and also what are the requirements of our customers and the price the customers are affordable. And the second one is to determine the price, margin, and cost feasibility. Target price is determined on the basis of market survey at which the product can be sold. Target price minus target profit is our target cost. And then comes to meet up the target by designing improved process or improvement in the designs for meeting up the targets, and finally to have a continuous improvement process and to implement a continuous improvement process so as to reduce the cost, and also implementing target costing. Life cycle costing. Life cycle costing is a costing approach that considers the sum of all the costs associated with a product or a project or an organization during its operation life. A Products or projects or an organization's life cycle is the time from which a new product or idea generation to the point at which the customer's support is withdrawn. Life cycle costing tracks and accumulates costs attributable to a product or a project from start to finish. It measures the economic and environmental impact of the product or service or a project through its manufacture, use and disposal. The life cycle costing was advocated by D.G. Woodward. The process of life cycle costing involves 4 stages. First one is identification of the items to be monitored. Then comes the identification of the cost structure, definition of links to estimate cost, and finally establishing a method for formulating life cycle cost. The different stages that are very important or significant includes planning of the life cycle costing analysis, that is defining the objectives, selecting and developing of the life cycle costing model, that is the cost breakdown structure, identifying data sources and contingencies, etc. Application of the life cycle costing model, and documentation reviewing of the life cycle costing results. Product life cycle costing is accumulation of products costs over its whole life from inception to abandonment. The typical stages of product life cycle include introduction, growth, maturity and decline. In each of these stages, what are the costs to be incurred or what will be the cost incurred on various aspects, even strategical concepts. Cost control is an important derivative of cost accounting and cost management. Modern business management not only must plan for future but also must constantly scrutinize the results of operation so that whatever possible out of control situation can be attacked and eliminated. Cost control not only means monetary limits on cost but also involves optimization of or optimum utilization of resources or performing the same job at the same cost. I hope the modern concepts of cost management are clear. These concepts are very relevant and significant at different stages of business life. Thank you. Module 3: Emerging Costing Approaches. Productivity is a ratio of a measure of total output to a measure of input used in the production of goods and services. Productivity growth is estimated by subtracting the growth in inputs from the growth in output. It actually explains the strength of the organization, the performance of the organization, and the limit to which the capacity has been utilized. Productivity index, on the other hand, measures an organization's ability to convert labor, capital, and material inputs into valued goods and services. It is actually a challenging concept of any organization to maximize its productivity index. High productivity means that a large amount of output is produced with little input. It measures how much output is generated per unit of input. Productivity ratio is the volume of the output to the volume of the input. Low productivity in the workplace refers to a condition where one or more workers complete tasks, processes, production, or sales inefficiently. This may be because of lack of employee training or ineffective management and supervision, or even the workplace stress, and also ineffective organizational structure. Business process reengineering is another emerging concept of costing approach. Business process reengineering is the act of reacting or recreating a core business process with the goal of improving the product output, quality, or reducing cost. It involves the analysis of the company workflows, finding processes that are subpar or inefficient, and figuring out ways to get rid of them or change them. Through business process reengineering, an organization can achieve radical changes in performance, like through measuring the cost, cycle time, service, and quality. Reengineering encourages organizations to abandon conventional approaches to problem solving and to rethink, that is, to create a revolutionary thinking. Issues in par with business process reengineering include unsound analysis and lack of support, wrong direction, irregularity in implementation, inadequate knowledge, and insufficient and incorrect placement of resources. Business process reengineering, as we know, is to meet the growing demands of intense competition. The organization has to focus not only on resource generation but also their effective utilization. Every effort has to be made to maintain a higher productivity through a level of higher efficiency. To attain this goal, organization has to go for radical changes in their process. In short, it is a radical overhaul of business processes. The term reengineering is also another name for business process reengineering. Just-in-time system advocates to provide the right part at the right place at the right time. It calls for acquiring just enough resources. Just-in-time system does not inquire or keep up the excessive inventory as it is not maintained. It aims at eliminating waste and continuously improving the productivity. The objectives of just-in-time system includes to provide customer satisfaction, to improve the space utilization, to increase the flexibility and reduce the investment in materials and eliminate the overall production. As said in the objective, the benefits of just-in-time includes reducing wastage, improves efficiency and productivity, and contributes to smoother work and production flows. Value chain analysis is a process where a firm identifies its primary and supportive activities that add value to the final product or service and then analyze these activities to reduce cost or increase differentiation. It actually reveals the firm's competitive edge and what are its advantages and disadvantages. There are two different approaches in analyzing the value chain. The first one is the cost advantage. In this, we first identify the firm's primary and supportive activities, then establish the relative importance of each activity in the total cost of the product or service, identify cost drivers for each activity, identify the links between the activities so as to know which is the weakest link and which is the strongest link, identify opportunities for reducing cost. The second approach in value chain analysis is a differentiation advantage. It identifies the customer's value creating activities, evaluates the differentiation strategies for improving customer value, and then identifies the best sustainable differentiation. Value chain analysis plays an essential and much significant role in decision making. It helps to analyze the low cost advantage and also the approach of differentiation, and also creates linkages between supplier customer involvement and business performance. As the product passes through various processing stages, value is added at each stage, accumulating into the combination of various values to meet the expectation and needs of the customer. The value or utility is created in basic raw material used from suppliers through distinct activities or processes resulting into a final product available to the customer. The linkage between value creating activities and the delivery of the final product to the customer is known as value chain. The value chain analysis was developed by Michael Porter in 1985. All the emerging costing approaches helps to shoot out the competitive edge and also to increase the productivity and efficiently manage the capacity of the organization. I hope the concept is clear. Thank you. Module 4, Costing in service sector and process costing. Operating costing is a method used in service sector to work out the cost of services offered to the consumers. For example, operating costing method is used in hospitals, power generating units, transportation sector, etc. A cost sheet is prepared to compute the cost or the total cost, and it is divided by the cost units for working out the per unit cost. Transport undertaking includes goods transport organization as well as passenger transport organization. The cost unit is either ton kilometer or passenger kilometer. The meaning is cost of carrying 1 ton over a distance of 1 kilometer or cost of carrying 1 passenger for a distance of 1 kilometer. The costs that are included in transport costing are fixed cost and variable cost, or fixed costs are also known as standing charges and variable costs are also known as running costs, and moreover maintenance charges are also applicable to this transport costing. In case of standing charges, the costs include license fees and insurance, salaries of drivers, cleaners and conductors, garage cost, which include garage rent and other relevant expenses, depreciation of the vehicle and other assets, tax applicable, any other fixed charge like administrative expenses, etc. In case of running costs or variable costs, the costs include petrol and diesel, oil, grease and any other variable costs. And in case of maintenance charges, these charges includes expenses like repairs and maintenance, tire and other charges connected with maintenance like servicing of the vehicle, etc. Boiler house costing, the cost to produce and use steam. The cost includes supervision cost, labor, that is coal handlers, strockers, etc., maintenance, that is repairs and maintenance of plant and equipment including renewal of fire bars, replacement of fire irons, etc., fuel, water cost, then fixed overhead, that includes rent, rates and taxes, depreciation, insurance and possibly interest on the capital, etc. Powerhouse engaged in electricity generation or steam generation use powerhouse costing. Operating costing statement can be prepared by identifying the costs associated with power generation or steam generation. The steam generation costing we have discussed earlier. Cost unit is different for electricity generation and steam generation. For electricity generation, cost unit is cost per kilowatt hour, and the costs that are identified under powerhouse cost includes fixed charges, that is rent, rates, taxes, insurance, depreciation, salaries, etc. Fuel charges and maintenance charges like meters, furnace, service materials, water charges, wages and labor charges, supervision and administration charges, etc. Hospital costing. Costs that can be identified with specific cost centers are assigned to them directly in hospital costing. Common costs are also apportioned to various cost centers on some equitable basis. Fixed costs and variable costs are shown separately in the cost sheet. Services are measured in terms of beds available, bed days available, or bed days occupied in the hospital costing. Inpatient day might be used as a cost unit for kitchen and laundry cost. Outpatient visit might be used as a cost unit for outpatient departments. Hospital costing. As the name suggests, the cost involved in the proper functioning of the hospital. This includes outpatient department cost, wards cost, pathology center cost, operation theatre cost, kitchen cost, laundry cost, cleaning cost, and the cost that are directly or indirectly related to the hospital service. Operating costs can be used effectively in hotels and canteens. While hotels are run purely on commercial principles, canteen facilities are provided by several organizations by providing subsidies. However, it is necessary to compute the cost in both the case to find out the profit or loss at the end of a particular period. In case of canteen, the costs associated with different products offered should be identified and cost per unit should be worked out. The cost unit may be number of meals served or any other dish offered to the customers. A typical format of cost sheet may be used for canteen costing. It should be noted that this format may not be standardized or can be modified as per the requirement of the organization. Cinema theater cost. The ongoing expenses that includes labor, securing the rights to films, theater upkeep, insurance facilities, facility rent, and the cost of popcorn, candy and refreshments, and the marketing all include the costing for cinema theaters. Hotel costing. The hotels provide accommodation to the guests as services, and thus it involves a high maintenance cost along with the fixed costs. The fixed costs included in hotel costing are depreciation, staff salaries, interest on capital, taxes, etc., whereas variable costs involves electricity charges, temporary staff salary, etc. Process costing is a method of costing which is used in those industries where the production is in a continuous process. That is, the output of one process becomes the input of subsequent process, and so on. Examples of such industries are paint works, chemical plants, food manufacturing, oil refining, paper mill, textile mills, sugar factories, fruit canning, dairy, and so on. In such industries, the input is put in the first process and the output of each process becomes the input of subsequent process, till the final product emerges from the last process. This method is employed where it is not possible to trace the items of prime cost, that is, which consists of all direct costs, to a particular order because its identity is lost in the continuous production. The features of process costing includes the production is in a continuous flow and is uniform. All units coming out as finished products are uniform with each other in all respect. The product is manufactured in a continuous flow and hence individual unit loses its identity. The unit cost is obtained by dividing the total cost for a particular period by the total output. This is the average cost of the product in units. Cost per process is ascertained and cost of each process is transferred to the subsequent process until the finished product emerges. In a particular process, normal and abnormal losses emerge. Normal loss is a loss which is inevitable in any process and thus cannot be avoided or controlled. Any loss which is over and above the normal loss is called the abnormal loss, and it is to be accounted for separately. If the loss is less than the normal expected loss, the difference is considered as abnormal gain. Abnormal gain is accounted similar to that of abnormal loss. The abnormal gain account is debited with the figure of reduced normal loss in quantity and value, and at the end of the accounting year, the balance in the abnormal gain account will be carried over to the profit and loss account. Joint products are commonly produced in industries like chemicals, oil refining, mining, meat packing, automobile, etc. In oil refining, fuel, oil, petrol, diesel, kerosene, lubricating oil are few examples of the joint products. Byproducts, on the other hand, is synonymously used with the term minor products. The byproduct is a secondary product which incidentally results from the manufacture of the main product. Byproducts are also produced from the same raw material and same process operations, but they are secondary results of operation. The main difference between the joint products and byproduct is that there is no intention to produce the byproduct, while the joint products are produced intentionally. The relationship between the byproduct and the main product changes with changes in economic or industrial conditions or with advancement of science. What was once a byproduct of an industry may become a main product, and one time main product may become a byproduct subsequently. For example, in sugar manufacturing, bagasse, the residual of sugarcane after the juice is extracted, molasses, residual of sugarcane juice after the impurities are taken out, and press mud are the three byproducts which are emerged at different stages of manufacturing. Sometimes, while transferring the cost of one process to subsequent one, some percentage of profit is added. This is called as inter-process profit. This is done when a process is treated as profit center. In such cases, unrealized profit is to be computed and shown separately. The objective of process costing is to work out the cost of each process, transfer the same to the subsequent process, and finally ascertain the total cost of production. Therefore, it is necessary to charge various costs to each process. For this, the factory is divided into distinct process or operations, and an account is kept for each process to which all the costs are debited. I hope both the concept of operating costing and process costing are clear. Thank you. Module 5, Standard Costing and Variance Analysis. One of the most important functions of cost accounting is cost control. For the purpose of cost control, it is essential to have a planned cost. Standard costing is one of the ways of planning cost. Standard costing is an effective technique of cost control. It helps to develop the limitations of historical costing, that is, actual costing. We'll take a deeper look into the concept of standard costing and variance analysis. In other words, standard cost is a predetermined cost for evaluating the actual performance. It is the expected cost of producing one unit. These are the types of standards: current standard, basic standard, ideal standard, and attainable standard. Current standard is a standard established for use over a short period of time related to current conditions. The problem with this type of standard is that it does not improve on current levels of efficiency. Basic standard. It is the established standard for use over a long period of time from which a current standard can be developed. The main disadvantage of this type of standard is that because it has remained unchanged over a long period of time, it may be outdated. The main advantage of this type of standard is that it shows the trends of price and efficiency from year to year. Ideal standard is a standard which can be attained under the most favorable condition. No provision is made, for example, for shrinkages, spoilage, or machine breakdowns. Our belief that results in unfavorable variance will remind management for the need for improvement in all phases of operations is set with ideal standards. Ideal standards are not widely used in practice because they influence employee motivation adversely. And finally, attainable standard. A standard which can be attained if a standard unit of work is carried out efficiently on a machine properly utilized or material properly utilized. Allowances are made for normal shrinkage, wastage, and machine breakdowns in this standard. The standard represents future performance and objectives which are reasonably attainable. Attainable standards have the highest motivational impact on the workforce. Standard cost shows what the cost should be, keeping in mind the most favorable production conditions and on the assumption that plant will operate at maximum possible efficiency. The collaboration of all functional departments is a must in settling standards. The quantity, price and rates, qualities or grades, terms of purchase, production substitution, etc. have to be kept in mind while settling standards. The success of standard cost system depends on the reliable accuracy and acceptance of the standard. The advantages of standard costing includes improved cost control, more useful information for managerial planning and decision making. Moreover, standard costing helps in saving the cost in record keeping. More possible reduction in production cost is also attainable through standard costing. Variance analysis is the difference between actual cost and its budgeted or standard cost, segregated into price or quality component. It has been shown that favorable variance occurs when output exceeds input or when the price paid for the goods or services is less than anticipated. The primary objective of variance analysis is to exercise cost control and cost reduction. It assists with managing budget by controlling budgeted versus actual costs. In program and project management, for example, financial data are generally assessed by key intervals or milestones. Under the class of variance, there are two types or classes of variances: cost variance and sales variance. Cost variance may be further divided, or there are three types of cost variance: material variance, labor variance, and overhead variance. Material variance are popularly known as material cost variance. Material variances are three types, namely material cost variance, material price variance, and material usage variance. We will look into the details of each of these types of material variances. Material cost variance is the difference between standard cost of material specified for the output achieved and the actual cost of material used. The formula for its computation is material cost variance is equal to standard cost minus actual cost of material. Here, standard cost of material is standard quantity into standard price per unit. Actual cost of material is actual quantity multiplied by actual price per unit. The material cost variance is further analyzed into material price variance and material usage variance. Material price variance is that part of material cost variance which is due to the difference between standard price and actual price paid. The formula is standard price minus actual price, the whole into actual quantity. Material price variance arises due to the reasons like changes in the price of material, uneconomical quantity of material purchased, high transport, storage and handling cost, failure to obtain cash discounts, failure to purchase materials at proper time, and even emergency purchase at high prices. Material usage variance is that part of material cost variance which is due to the difference between standard quantity and actual quantity used. It is also known as material quantity variance. Material usage variance formula is standard price whole multiplied by standard quantity minus actual quantity. Material usage variance may arise due to the carelessness in material handling, loss due to pilferage, faulty workmanship, defect in plant and machinery causing excessive consumption of material, purchase of inferior quality material, changes in the method of production. To sum up, material cost variance is composed of material price variance and material usage variance. That is, material cost variance is equal to material price variance plus material usage variance. Taking example 1, here it is given the standard and actual price and quantity of material. The standard price is ₹10 per kilogram and the actual price is ₹8 per kilogram. Standard quantity is 200 kilograms and actual quantity is 150 kilograms for the material to be produced. So we are asked to compute material purchase variance. The formula for material purchase variance, as we know, is standard price minus actual price, the whole multiplied by actual quantity. So here the standard price is ₹10, actual price is ₹8. So ₹10 minus ₹8, the whole multiplied by actual quantity 150 kilograms. So we get rupees 300, which is favorable. In example 2, taking the same question of example 1, while finding material usage variance, we know the formula is standard quantity minus actual quantity whole multiplied by standard price. So the inputs are 200 kilogram minus 150 kilogram into the whole multiplied into rupees 10. You get rupees 500 favorable. Taking the same question of example 1 to find out the material cost variance in example 3, we know the formula is standard quantity into standard price minus actual quantity into actual price. So inserting the inputs, standard quantity is 200 kilograms, standard price is rupees 10, actual quantity 150 kilogram, actual price rupees 8, we get rupees 800 favorable. We can cross check this using our formula material cost variance is equal to material price variance plus material usage variance. We have already found out material price variance in our first example as rupees 300 favorable, and material usage variance as rupees 500 variable. So favorable. So we can find out that the total of rupees 800 favorable is the material cost variance as per this formula, and which can be rechecked in the above formula, we get the same answer. Material mix variance. It is a part of material usage variance. It arises when two or more materials are used in the production of an article. It is the result of a difference between the standard portion and the actual portion of mixture of materials. Material yield variance is calculated in two situations. When actual weight of the mix and standard weight of the mix are the same, then material mix variance is equal to standard price the whole of standard quantity minus actual quantity. But when actual weight of the mix and the standard weight of the mix are different, then material mix variance is standard price in the whole revised standard quantity minus actual quantity. Material yield variance. It is that portion of material usage variance which is due to the difference between the standard yield specified and the actual yield obtained. The difference in yield is valued under standard yield rate. Material yield variance is equal to standard yield rate the whole of standard yield minus actual yield. If the actual yield is more than the standard yield, it is a favorable, and vice versa. Standard yield rate is equal to, the formula for standard yield rate is standard cost of standard mix divided by net standard output. If the total weight of standard mix and actual cost are different, then yield variance is calculated as material yield variance is equal to standard yield rate, the bracket, revised standard yield minus actual yield. Here standard yield rate is standard cost of revised standard mix divided by net revised standard output. The labor variance or wage variance is similar to material variance. When standard cost of labor differs from actual wage cost, the labor variance arises. The important labor variances are labor cost variance, labor rate variance, labor efficiency variance, labor idle time variance, labor mix variance, labor yield variance. We will look into the details of each of these variances. Labor cost variance is also called the wage variance. It is a difference between standard cost of labor allowed for actual output achieved and actual cost of labor. The formula for labor cost variance is standard cost of labor minus actual cost of labor or actual wages. Labor rate variance is similar to material price variance. It is that part of the labor cost variance which arises due to the difference between standard rate specified and the actual paid rate. So the formula is labor rate variance is equal to actual time the whole into standard rate minus actual rate. Labor rate variance arises due to changes in the basic wage rate or use of different methods of wage payment and even unscheduled overtime. Labor efficiency variance is also called labor usage or quantity variance. It is that portion of labor cost variance which arises due to the difference between standard hours specified for the actual output and the actual hours spent. The formula for labor efficiency variance is standard rate into the whole of standard time minus actual time. Actual time here means actual hours paid minus abnormal time. The variance or the labor efficiency variance arises due to lack of proper supervision, lack of sufficient training, lack of proper working conditions, increase in labor turnover, failure to maintain machinery in proper condition, and also change in the production process. Idle time variance is that portion of labor cost variance which arises due to abnormal idle time of workers on account of sickness, power failure, machine breakdown, etc. The formula is idle time variance is equal to abnormal idle time into standard rate. It should be noted that the idle time variance would always be unfavorable. To verify the labor cost variance, as already done in material cost variance, we can verify labor cost variance with the formula labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance plus idle time variance. Labor mix variance. When different types of grades of labor are used in production process, two or more variants are computed. One is labor mix variance and the other is labor yield variance. Labor mix variance is that part of labor efficiency variance. It arises when there is a change in the composition of labor force. That is, where there is no change in the standard composition of labor and the total time spent is equal to the standard time, then the formula is labor mix variance is equal to standard cost of standard composition minus standard cost of actual composition. But when there is a change in the labor composition due to a shortage of one grade of labor, but there is no change in the total standard time and actual time, then the formula is labor mix variance is equal to standard cost of revised standard composition minus standard cost of actual composition. And when total actual time of labor differs from total standard time of labor, the formula is labor mix variance is equal to total time of actual composition divided by total time of standard composition multiplied by standard cost of standard composition the whole minus standard cost of actual composition. This can be also formulated as standard rate into the whole of revised standard time minus actual time. Labor yield variance is same like material yield variance. It is the difference between standard yield and actual output or yield. The formula is labor yield variance is equal to standard labor cost per unit multiplied by the whole of actual yield minus standard yield. Overhead variance. Overhead cost is the sum of indirect material, indirect labor and indirect expense. Overheads are classified into fixed and variable. Fixed overheads are those which do not change according to volume of production. They remain fixed for a given period. Variable overheads are those which change according to the volume of production. overhead variance is the difference between standard cost charged, or that is standard overhead cost charged to production, and the actual overhead cost incurred. It may be under or over absorption of overhead. Overhead cost variance is split into variable overhead variance and fixed overhead variance. Variable overhead variance is the difference between actual variable overhead and standard variable overhead cost for actual production. When overhead rate per hour is used, the formula for variable overhead cost variance is standard hours for actual output multiplied by standard variable overhead rate per hour, the whole of minus actual variable overhead. But when standard overhead rate per unit is used, or the overhead rate per unit is used, variable overhead cost variance formula is actual overhead into standard variable overhead rate per unit, the whole minus actual variable overhead. Fixed overhead variance or fixed overhead cost variance is the difference between standard fixed overhead for actual production and actual fixed overhead. When fixed overhead rate per unit is used, the formula for fixed overhead cost variance is actual output into standard fixed overhead rate per unit, the whole minus actual fixed overhead. But when fixed overhead rate per hour is used, the formula for fixed overhead cost variance is standard hours for actual output into standard fixed overhead rate, the whole minus actual fixed overhead. Sales variance. A sales variance is the monetary difference between actual and budgeted sales. It is used to analyze changes in the sales levels over time. It is a very important and efficient variance outlook. As the name suggests, profit variance is the difference between the actual profit experienced and the budgeted profit level. There are different types or variances of profit, that is gross profit variance, contribution margin variance, operating profit variance, and net profit variance. The main aspect of variance or its interpretation lies on the various aspects considered in computation of the variance. The first is compute the amount of variance, then to determine the cause of any significant variance, and then identifying performance measures that will track those activities, analyze the results of tracking, and then determine what is needed to correct the problem, and finally taking corrective action. This wholesome explains the interpretation of variance. To know what is the variance or how has the variance occurred, the investigation of variances arises. This may be the amount of variance, this may be the reasons for difference between the actual performance and budgeted performance. The person responsible for poor performance is one of the reasons for the variance, and moreover corrective actions should be taken for the same. To sum up, variance is a very important aspect in the system and the concept of cost management, because it helps to control and reduce the cost and is a significant aspect in standard costing. Standard costing is a technique of costing which has evolved to overcome the limitations of historical costing. Historical costing is a technique in which costs are ascertained after they have been incurred. In case of standard costing, the use of standard cost is involved with the establishment of standard cost, comparison of actual cost with the standard, analysis of deviations, that is the variances, and taking corrective actions to control the factors leading to the deviations. Continuous comparison of actual cost with standard cost brings to the light the wages, the wastages and inefficiencies in time, so that corrective actions can be taken without delay. It helps the management to keep the cost of production within the limits and thereby to improve the profitability. I hope the concept of standard costing and the variance analysis is clear. Thank you.